Hey everybody, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I'm your host, G1. As always, I hope you're having a good week. I have had one of those weeks, man, I tell you, it has been a struggle. Been riding the struggle bus, as they say. Everything I attempted to do this week has been a disaster. I'm going to be taking a week to travel in a couple of weeks. It won't be next week. It'll probably be the week after, but I'm gonna go see some friends and spend a little time in the woods. So I'm really looking forward to that. But that means that usually when I do something like that, I try to get a lot of stuff done around the house. Projects that I've maybe been putting on hold, and maintenance on my cars, my trucks, my vehicles, I try to do all of that. Maintenance on gear, things, just whatever. I got a lot of stuff going on for a couple of weeks before I take a trip like this. Some of that's you got to do some of those honeydew things to smooth over the fact that you're not going to be at the house for a week. So, those kind of things. But everything this week that I have worked on has taken 3 times as long as it should have because of just various things, tool related, just all kinds of things like that happening. Multiple trips to the store, multiple days to get things done because of having to go back and forth to the store. Things that should have taken a couple hours end up being 6-hour jobs. I mean, it has been exhausting. And also means that I have not really had, exactly a lot of time to be following the old current events too closely. So I decided for this episode that we're going to do something a little different that I haven't done in a while. I've done shows like this before, but it's been a little bit. We're going to do some practical, tactical stuff revolving around radios and comms. I got a new radio the other day, and I want to kind of expound on it a bit because I think that it is a really good option for people who are working in the field. And I'm going to leave that description that open because honestly, this is a device that I think can work your day-to-day job if you happen to be out in tough conditions, like, I don't know, doing forestry or survey kind of work, or maybe, drone operator for survey crew, or real estate, something like that, road crew. It's just a good radio, and it might be an option for you if you use the bandwidths that it covers in your work. And it also perhaps would be good for something like search and rescue or emergency work, at least on a volunteer basis, because it does not have P25 encryption like other public safety radios do. But it is rugged, it is water resistant and dust resistant, and it's got a really attractive price tag, and it has a little trick that I think makes it a good candidate for preppers or others of that stripe if you follow. Now, this is not a full radio review. I have not had a chance to really use the radio very much. I'm going mostly off of what I've seen others use it, and it's just that I picked this radio up and I was very impressed with it out of the box. And I'm going to get an opportunity when I do travel to put it to some field tests. So I'll give you a report back on how that works. But just wanted to clarify that up front. This is just sort of the initial impression and something to put the radio on your radar for you to take a look at it. So which radio am I talking about? Well, it's the BTEC UV Pro. And I'm going to get more into details about it shortly here, but I want to begin by covering something kind of at a higher level and then working down to the UV Pro specifically. I have seen some recent posts and statements made about some of the trends in what we might call guerrilla communication that I think we need to address, because I think there's a lot of noise out there that we need to get around, and some things that people who are being critical of these are maybe not considering. The trend in guerrilla communications is working around, and if you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, think of it this way: working around existing corporate communication structures and government-controlled communication infrastructures, or government-monitored or surveilled infrastructures. And this is for, people who don't want the expense, they don't want the snooping, just in day-to-day things, all the way to when you have crisis in certain countries, having an alternative means to contact people and speak with them that go around those kind of government gateways and whatnot. And this kind of takes the form of basically, how can I get the most information throughput on and I'm using the air quotes here, legal, license-free system at a low cost, relatively easy to build, set up, and deploy as possible. There's a ton of work being done by people who are motivated by this core idea, and they're basically doing this for free. Some of them are developing software and hardware that they might later put out, at a small cost, and some of it's, honestly at the higher end for what it is. Think $1,000, devices, which, from all accounts, from what I've seen, are pretty well made, and they do what they say they do. But that can be a barrier to entry for some people, to think about. Bottom line is a lot of good people are putting a ton of effort into this. And we generally see two flavors right now that are the main focus of this hardware and software that are coming out at very high speed. The iteration here is very impressive. What motivated people can do when they put their minds to it, to put out things and fill a need. Generally, the two flavors are LoRa, that's LORA, which comes in the general theme of Meshtastic, and the other flavor is Halo, which is basically extended Wi-Fi. So let me do a quick rundown on these two in case you're not familiar with them. LoRa is a low frequency, low throughput, but long range system that is most often going to be found in the form of low cost PCB boards, little electronic boards that you sometimes have to build yourself, or do some kind of soldering on them so they're not. That's kind of a way to get around the regulation requirements on transmitters, is because they're not completed. They're like kits that you buy, and then you have to put them in a 3D printed case or a pre-made case, something like that. Now, this gives you a lot of flexibility in how you're going to configure it, what kind of antennas you're going to use, what kind of batteries or power source you're going to use, and so forth. But that comes with risk factors. One of those being that these require some knowledge to complete the setup, because you often have to do things like flash the firmware, or download programs, build programs, these kind of things on these devices. You need to do some soldering to finish out these kits, put in power supplies, this kind of thing. You need access to 3D files in a 3D printer, whether that's your own or somebody that you know, or have access to build a case. Or you have to have some kind of purpose-built container or utilized container to put them in. And not to mention that there can be issues with the Meshtastic software that is ran on these devices. At least that is my personal experience that I've had. I've had issues with Meshtastic and how it works. And I don't want to drive too deeply into Meshtastic, because it is kind of this is a little bit of a rabbit hole that's kind of a sidetrack to the conversation. So I recommend that you go watch some videos specifically on Meshtastic, and Halo for that matter. There's a couple of really good YouTube channels out there that are doing a lot of good work on it. If you really want to take deep dives into those, this video is not the place for that. Basically, it is mesh networking software that runs on one of these little transmitters, and it's paired to your smartphone using the Meshtastic app. It gives you off-grid text messaging and GPS location sharing all through that app on your smartphone, and that information is passed to everyone in your little Meshtastic group that has the little Meshtastic units that you configure. So there's a level of privacy there, but it's not necessarily ironclad. But it is a way around, as we said, the corporate or government infrastructure, communications infrastructure. It's off grid. Okay. To be fair, Halo has kind of some of the same pitfalls. Before you think that I'm picking a winner here, don't be mistaken. Generally Halo is going to be on those small form factor PCBs, just like Meshtastic or LoRa, and it's going to require some form of housing or case. The same kind of things are involved there. But where we see a difference, in my opinion, is that Halo is basically Wi-Fi with a longer range. So essentially, just like setting up your smartphone to your Wi-Fi in your house, you would simply connect to the Halo board, just like a router. And if you have a different board or unit a mile away or half a mile away, whatever your terrain allows for you there, and it's connected to the internet, or perhaps something like an ATAX server, perhaps that you're using it for that, then you get this fast throughput, a fairly good amount of data, as well as applications that can do messaging and voice traffic. So you kind of get the full functionality, or most of the functionality of your smartphone, off of a cellular network with Halo, which I really like. I think that's a pretty powerful thing to have. So in my opinion, as long as you've got good clear signal out there, you can even do video from what I've seen. But in my opinion, Halo is kind of the better option. It just gives you more throughput, and it kind of has fewer moving parts. There's less software, less little bits to worry about. But as I said, however, it has some of those same hardware issues that Meshtastic does, that are potential problems. But those are things that, all of those things can be overcome, if you've got the right gear and you've got the right testing and skills with it. All of these things, however, including the BTEC UV Pro that I'm going to get to, have an issue, and that being that they are transmitters. So if you're attempting to be clandestine and hide the fact that you're transmitting, then firing up any of these could be a potential problem. That being said, I have seen recently posted comments from comms people and various sources. This kind of seems to be a trend here, suggesting that mesh networking, which would include both Meshtastic and the Halo devices, they both use mesh technology. Mesh networking was somehow more dangerous or more of a problem, and that we shouldn't be using that if we're trying to be clandestine. And I disagree with that. I have a big problem with that. So let me tell you why. Let me start out by saying first, as a caveat, if you are transmitting anything, then you are in danger. If you're radiating, it's a problem. Okay? It's not the end of the world. It's the dangers that are out there, if you're trying to be clandestine, can be mitigated. But if you're transmitting any kind of signal, you can get caught if the right people are looking for you, meaning people who have the skill, the technology, the time, and the motivation to find you. They can find you, and they will find you, especially if you are careless and operate with no regard to your safety. So all that being said, here's why I think mesh is not really a problem, and in fact can be an asset. Mesh networks build a network of redundant transmitters that can operate self-contained. So more like a ham repeater than a ham radio. So think of cell towers, like I said, or ham repeaters. There's nobody working at a cell tower. Okay, it just sits there and it passes traffic all the time. It doesn't need anybody to watch it. So they can be built and deployed, and then as long as the nodes can see each other and be part of the network, you can leave them alone. And short of a continuous power supply, they don't have to have any attention. You just connect to them just like you would a cell tower. You're up on the net, you're passing traffic, and all's fine. You still have to be mindful of transmitting, but you basically have an autonomous infrastructure that is in place that carries signal for you. And you might say, well, those nodes are transmitting all the time because they're using like a keep alive to keep the network established. And that's true, but I want you to consider this, and this is where I really kind of differ with the guys who are saying, well, no, we don't want to use mesh networking. The modern world is full of signal. It is just awash in signal. If you really start looking at all of the things around us that are transmitting and receiving all the time, everything is transmitting some kind of signal. We got your houses, from your Wi-Fi, your appliances, your phones, all of this, your businesses, your cars, your trucks. Those are all transmitting signals. You got road signs, you got gas pumps, you got fast food kiosks that are transmitting. Everything. It's just all out there. And the more crowded your environment is, and the more of these businesses and urban congestion that you have, the more of these transmitters you're going to have. And they kind of produce what you can look at as like a noise floor. Okay, this is a signal floor. There's just all this signal out there. It's everywhere. It's all around you. And anything that's operating in those bands is far more difficult to track as an individual transmitter than something that is an outlier. So if you pick up a ham radio operating on a ham band, for example, and you key that transmitter, suddenly, boop, your signal pops up above that noise floor. Hey, this is something that's operating outside of the normal trash that we see out there. That's interesting. Now, it's going to be in a different group of noise because there's a bunch of ham transmitters out there and in those same frequencies, but it's a far smaller number than these other transmitters that are out there that are operating in what you would call like the free bands or the the license-free bands, that kind of thing. And so you become much more easily tracked and easily identified when you're using something that is an outlier. If you look like a transmitter in the noise floor, then you are less likely to be spotted. Well, Halo uses Wi-Fi bands, meaning it looks like a home router, albeit one that's more powerful, but it's far less likely to stand out in an urban or a suburban environment than, say, a ham radio. Now, conversely, if you are a transmitter and you're out in a very rural area, particularly one where there shouldn't be a transmitter, maybe that ham radio looks far less conspicuous. Perhaps out there you want to look like a game warden or a forestry service radio. So maybe a marine band or something like that. So that radio that maybe has access to the same kind of bands that your public service people or just hunters or whatever might be using. Well, maybe that is better for you out in a rural area than it is in an urban area. So you need to be thinking of these things in the terms of camouflage. Okay, it's signal camouflage. You need to look like you're supposed to be there. So where does a BTEC radio fit into all this? Well, it's a ham band unit, basically covering the same 2 meter, 70 centimeter airband FM radio. It's essentially your normal Baofeng profile that you're familiar with, the ham handhelds. But it has a neat option that I think makes it kind of stand out, maybe a little bit more than some others. Probably the biggest thing with it is it's very rugged. As I mentioned, This company is affiliated with Baofeng. However, they're running their own flavor here. They're doing their own design work in the U.S. It's made in China, so take that for what it's worth. Keep in mind, China will build to your specs for electronics. So if you're willing to fit the bill, they'll build to that quality. And BTEC has paid them a little bit more to build a better quality radio than your normal Baofeng that you're familiar with. So this is a more ruggedized radio, waterproof, dustproof, shockproof, or resistant. I won't say proof. That's probably stretching it a little too far. But it's a little bit better quality radio. When you get it out of the box, I was very impressed with it. I thought, this is something that I would feel comfortable putting in a vest or in my gear on a pack or something like that and taking out into the woods, because I don't think I'm going to break it just by rolling over on it or something like that. So it's a better radio out of the box, I think, than your standard Baofeng. What's kind of cool about it is that it includes Bluetooth, which is something that more and more handhelds are adopting these days. And so what that allows you to do is to pair it with a smartphone. And you download their application, their app, BTEC UV Pro app or UV Programmer app, put that on your phone, and then you pair over Bluetooth to your phone, and it gives you the full programming ability right there on your phone. So, and across that Bluetooth link. So you don't need special programming cables or software or a laptop or anything like that. So carrying that out in the field, whether you may or may not should be carrying a smartphone is mission dependent, obviously, but it would allow you, hey, I need to make a change. I can do that on my smartphone. Boom, boom, boom. Right there on the radio. You don't need any special equipment to do that. I think that's pretty cool. Because the radio will do digital modes, it has APRS capability. So if you're into that, which gives you GPS positions that can be seen on that same phone app. So if you're doing positioning, you're working in a permissive environment, and you're into the APRS and all that with buddies, you can see their location on your app just like they can see yours, and so forth. Which is that's an interesting part of the hobby if you're into that kind of stuff. Now, the trick that I was talking about earlier that I mentioned is because of this Bluetooth stack, and it will pair with your phone. This has kind of inspired some third-party development here. In the ATAC, in the ATAC sphere, GoTac is a developer that builds plugins and server technology for ATAC. If you don't know what ATAC is, you're probably behind. Go watch T-Rex's videos. Go watch S2 Underground's video. He just put out a recent one on ATAC again, a kind of getting started with ATAC. Really good. GoTac has published a BTAC plugin, or BTEC plugin, that works with several of the BTEC radios, including the UV Pro. And this allows some level of radio control, but more importantly, it integrates ATAC over this radio network. And this means that you can have ATAC off-grid over this radio, which is huge. If you're accustomed to running ATAC over a cellular network, and you're trying to figure out, well, how am I going to do this now where I don't have cellular connectivity? This gives you that option. I think that's a really cool deal. Now, that software is licensed. They have a year license, and then they have a lifetime license. And it's not cheap. It's $200 for the lifetime license. At this point, once I run the radio and see how the radio works and how we utilize it, and if it does what we think it's going to do, that's something that I'm going to invest in. So everything that I've seen, all the accounts that I've seen so far, the feedback from the users on the Discord group for GoTac is very positive. Everybody seems to be really liking the application, and it's working really well. So I'm very excited about that. I think it's a really cool deal, and this thing should find a place in your radio arsenal, which brings me to the final point here. There is no one size fits all solution to clandestine communications or any kind of communications, really. When things are permissive, then you have a lot more flexibility. You have a lot more networks you can utilize, things that are out there, although with caution, of course. But when things go sideways, you're going to need a host of tools to deal with the problems that are presented. And not every problem is a nail, so you can't fix them all with a hammer. Okay, you need the tools, and more importantly, you need the skills. So you build skills by practice. Get out there in the field and run your gear. Odds are you're going to uncover problems that you didn't know existed. And the more skilled you are, the more problems that you've seen and fixed, the quicker you're going to be able to deal with those things. So I want to thank everybody who recently purchased a t-shirt. Don't forget to go over there and check them out at the merch store. Go over there and check them out and get yourself one. And that is all I have time for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab, Nice Crew, and the Mothership. And I'll see you on the next episode.